Rachel Moore, 22, had just stepped onto the training field when a drill sergeant barked, "Who gave you a real weapon? Hand it over." A male recruit looked her up and down and sneered. "She looks like she's holding a mop, not a rifle." They ripped the M4 from her hands and tossed it aside. But less than 2 minutes later, 5 men lay groaning on the ground, and Rachel stood there unarmed, not a drop of sweat on her face. They took her rifle, and in return, she made the entire camp go silent. She stood there, her loosely wavy black hair tied back in a messy bun, her uniform wrinkled from a long night of travel. Rachel's face was bare, no trace of makeup, her dark eyes steady, but sharp like they could cut through steel if she wanted them to. She didn't flinch when the sergeant yelled, didn't blink when the recruit mocked her. She just lowered her head, her hands still at her sides, and let them take the rifle. The other recruits snickered their voices carrying across the dusty Nevada training field. To them, she looked out of place like someone who'd wandered into the wrong room. They didn't know who she was. Nobody did. Not yet. The air was dry, the kind of heat that makes your throat itch. Rachel's boots crunched on the gravel as she walked away from the firing line, her shoulders squared despite the laughter behind her. She didn't turn back, didn't give them the satisfaction of a glance. But her fingers twitched just once, as if they missed the weight of the M4. The sergeant, a barrel-chested man with a buzz cut and a permanent scowl, called after her. "You're done here, sweetheart. Go wait by the benches." The word sweetheart landed like a slap, but Rachel's stride didn't falter. She sat on the metal bench, her hands folded in her lap, and watched the others fumble through the drill. A group of recruits gathered near the water station, their voices low but sharp. One of them, a tall guy named Jared with a flashy watch and a smug grin, pointed at Rachel's boots. "Look at those," he said, loud enough for her to hear. "Bet she polished them with dish soap." The others laughed, their eyes flicking to her scuffed, dusty boots. Rachel didn't look down. She just reached for her water bottle, unscrewed the cap slowly and took a sip. Her movements were deliberate, like she was measuring every second. Jared leaned closer to his buddy, whispering something that made them both chuckle. Rachel set the bottle down her fingers, brushing the cap, and her eyes met Jared's for a split second. He stopped laughing. Just like that. During a morning roll call, a recruit named Kyle, with a loud voice and a habit of showing off his family's military medals, stepped out of line to point at Rachel. "Hey, new girl," he called, his tone mocking. "You ever even fired a gun before, or you just here for the free food?" The laughter spread like wildfire, recruits nudging each other, their eyes glinting with amusement. Rachel stood still, her posture straight, her hands clasped behind her back. She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted her weight slightly, her gaze locking onto Kyle's. He faltered. His next jab caught in his throat, and the sergeant barked at him to get back in line. Rachel's lips didn't move, but the air around her seemed to tighten, and Kyle's bravado shrank under her stare. "Hey, before we go further, can you do something real quick? Grab your phone, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to share these stories with you, to walk through these moments together. Let's keep this going, okay? Now, let's get back to Rachel." The humiliation didn't stop at the rifle. It was like the camp had decided she was their punching bag. During the next drill, a wiry recruit named Derek, all sharp elbows and sharper smirks, leaned in close as they lined up for inspection. "What's with the thrift store uniform?" he said loud enough for the others to hear. "You borrowed that from your mom?" The group around him laughed, their eyes darting to Rachel's plain, slightly oversized fatigues. She didn't respond, just adjusted her stance, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The sergeant, the same one from before, chimed in. "Focus, people. Leave the charity case alone." More laughter. Rachel's jaw tightened, but she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than their noise. During a break, Rachel sat alone on a crate eating a plain sandwich from the mess hall. A female recruit named Lila, with perfectly manicured nails and a voice that dripped with fake sweetness, sauntered over. "You know," Lila said, tilting her head, "if you tried a little harder with your appearance, people might take you seriously." She paused, waiting for a reaction. Rachel took another bite of her sandwich, chewing slowly, her eyes on the horizon. Lila's smile faltered, but she pressed on. "I mean, you're in the military, not a soup kitchen. Maybe ask for a mirror next time." The recruits nearby snickered. Rachel set her sandwich down, wiped her hands on her pants, and looked at Lila. "You done?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Lila's face froze and she walked away, her heels clicking on the concrete. Later that day, they moved to the weapons maintenance station. The air smelled of oil and metal, and the tables were littered with disassembled rifles. Derek, still riding his high from earlier, tossed a jammed M4 onto the table in front of Rachel. "Want to try fixing it?" he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or is that too complicated for you?" The others watched, expecting her to fumble. Rachel picked up the rifle, her movements slow and deliberate. She cleared the chamber, checked the bolt, and started disassembling it. Her hands moved like they'd done this 1,000 times. 8.2 seconds later, the M4 was reassembled, not a single screw out of place. The room went quiet. Even Derek's smirk faltered. A trainer, a grizzled man named Hodges, walked in just as she set the rifle down. He stared at the timer on the wall, then at Rachel. "That's a camp record," he said almost to himself. She just nodded and stepped back. In the middle of a night drill, Rachel was assigned to lead a small team through a mock ambush scenario. The group hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure why she was in charge. A recruit named Owen, a burly guy with a loud laugh and a habit of questioning orders, muttered, "What's she gonna do? Knit us out of danger." The others chuckled, but their laughter died when Rachel signaled for silence. She moved low her steps, silent, guiding them through the dark with hand signals so precise they seemed rehearsed. When the ambush hit, she directed the team to cover, her voice steady and low. They escaped without a single casualty. Owen's face was tight as they debriefed, his usual bravado gone. Rachel didn't acknowledge it. She just checked her gear and moved on. The next morning, they were running a tactical simulation. Rachel's squad was tasked with securing a mock village, and she suggested a hollow core perimeter squeeze formation. It was a strategy she'd seen work in real combat, the kind that saved lives when bullets were live. But the squad leader, a stocky guy named Travis with a chip on his shoulder, waved her off. "That's cute," he said, rolling his eyes. "But we're doing it my way." The others nodded, eager to follow someone louder, flashier. Rachel didn't argue. She stepped back, her arms crossed, and watched as they marched into the simulation. It was a disaster. The enemy team flanked them in minutes, and their squad was eliminated first. Travis threw his helmet down, cursing. "See," he said, pointing at Rachel. "Told you she wasn't all that. The others laughed, but Rachel just smiled faintly, turned, and walked away. As the squad debriefed, Rachel lingered near the strategy board, her fingers tracing the edge of a map. A younger recruit, a quiet kid named Sam, with glasses too big for his face, hesitated before approaching her. "Why didn't you push harder?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your plan, it made sense." Rachel looked at him, her eyes softening for a moment. She picked up a marker and sketched a quick adjustment to the map, showing where the squad had gone wrong. Sam watched, his jaw dropping slightly. How do you know this stuff?" he asked. Rachel capped the marker and set it down. "Experience," she said simply, then walked away. Sam stared after her, clutching the map like it was a treasure. That evening she sat alone at a table in the mess hall, a notebook open in front of her. She was sketching the tactical plan she'd suggested, her pencil moving in precise, confident lines. A senior officer, Captain Ruiz, happened to pass by. He stopped, his eyes narrowing as he looked over her shoulder. "Where'd you learn to draw a map like that?" he asked, his voice gruff but curious. Rachel didn't look up. "Delta 7 Rapid Response Center," she said. "Alpha Echo, unit leader." Ruiz's face froze. He didn't say anything for a long moment, then walked away, muttering something into his radio. By the next week, Rachel's plan was printed in the training manuals, adopted as official material. Nobody in her squad mentioned it. They didn't have to. The way they avoided her eyes said enough. During a logistics exercise, Rachel was tasked with reorganizing a supply drop under simulated combat conditions. A recruit named Becca, with a sharp tongue and a habit of flaunting her Ivy League degree, scoffed as Rachel sorted crates. "You're wasting time," Becca said, loud enough for the others to hear. "This isn't a game of Tetris." The group snickered, watching Rachel stack boxes with quiet precision. When a surprise attack hit, the supplies were perfectly positioned, allowing the team to access gear without breaking cover. Becca's smug grin vanished as the instructor praised the setup. Rachel didn't look at her. She just wiped her hands on her pants and moved to the next task. The humiliations kept coming, though. It was like the camp couldn't let her be. During a training run a few days later, 5 recruits, Derek, Travis, and 3 others, blocked her path. They were big guys, all muscle and bravado, the kind who thought size meant power. Travis, the loudest, snatched the rifle from her arms. "How are you going to fight now with your hands?" he said, laughing. The others closed in their faces hard, their intentions clear. One of them, a lanky guy named Cole with a fake friendly grin, stepped closer. "Neil," he said, his voice low. "Show some respect." Rachel didn't move. Her eyes locked onto his calm but unyielding. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Then it happened. Rachel pivoted her shoulder, driving into Cole's chest. He hit the ground out cold before he knew what happened. Travis lunged, but she was faster, her arm hooking around his neck. 5 seconds later, he was choking his face red foam at the corners of his mouth. The third guy, a broad-shouldered recruit named Mike, charged. Rachel sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and flipped him over her shoulder. He landed hard, the air rushing out of him. The last two came at her together, all fists and fury. She ducked, twisted, and sent them both sprawling onto the grass. 88 seconds. That's all it took. The other recruits watching didn't move, didn't speak. Rachel stood there, her breathing steady, her hands loose at her sides. She didn't say a word, just picked up her rifle and walked away. The next day, during a navigation drill, Rachel was paired with a new recruit named Vanessa, a loud talker with a habit of name-dropping her connections. As they moved through the desert, Vanessa kept glancing at Rachel's plain gear. "You know, my cousin's in Special Forces," she said, adjusting her pristine backpack. "He says, you've got to look the part to be the part. No offense, but you don't." Rachel kept walking her map, folded neatly in her hand. Vanessa smirked, thinking she'd won. Then they hit a checkpoint where the compass was off. Vanessa fumbled, cursing under her breath. Rachel stepped forward, adjusted the map with a quick glance at the stars, and pointed the way. The instructor nodded, impressed. Vanessa's face burned, but she didn't say another word. The whispers started after that. Who was she? How'd she do it? By the next day, the mood in the camp had shifted. People didn't laugh as much when she walked by, but the doubts didn't stop. During a briefing, an officer named Lieutenant Carter, a wiry man with a permanent sneer, called her out in front of everyone. "Your file," he said, his voice sharp. "Is it real?" A recruit in the back, a guy named Ethan, with slicked back hair and a superiority complex, muttered, "Probably use connections. Or she's hiding something." The room buzzed with agreement. Rachel's background was pulled for re-verification, and while they waited, she was sidelined. No drills, no training, just a folding chair in the corner, where she sat, her hands folded, her eyes on the floor. Ethan walked by and smirked. From janitor to soldier. Hilarious. Rachel didn't look up, but her fingers tightened around the edge of her chair. During her isolation, Rachel was assigned to inventory duty, sorting gear in a dusty storage shed. A cocky recruit named Nate, with a loud laugh and a habit of showing off his gym muscles, strolled in. "They got you counting socks now," he said, tossing a pair of gloves at her. "Guess that's where you belong." Rachel caught the gloves midair, folded them neatly, and placed them on the shelf. She didn't look at him. Nate laughed louder this time and grabbed a box of ammo, pretending to inspect it. "Bet you don't even know what these are for," he said. Rachel reached over, took the box, and sorted it into the correct bin without a word. Her hands moved with precision, like she'd cataloged 1,000 boxes before. Nate's laugh died in his throat, and he left the shed without another word. A week later, the truth started to crack open. The database came back empty. Rachel's file was classified. Lieutenant Carter got a call that made his face go pale. It was General Bronson, straight from the Pentagon. His voice came through the speaker clear and cold. "Don't touch her," he said. "She's the reason any of us made it back from Operation Hollow Tide." The room went dead silent. People shifted in their seats, their eyes darting to Rachel. She didn't move, didn't react, just kept her gaze steady. The general's words hung in the air, heavy as lead. Operation Hollow Tide. Nobody talked about it, but everyone knew the stories. A mission gone wrong. A team lost. One survivor. And now, here she was sitting in a wrinkled uniform, her hands still folded in her lap. The news spread fast, but not everyone believed it. During a night drill, a recruit named Paul, a guy with a loud voice and a need to be the center of attention, cornered Rachel by the barracks. "Hollow Tide, huh?" he said, his arms crossed. "Sounds like a fairy tale. Prove it." He tossed a knife onto the ground, daring her to pick it up. Rachel didn't touch it. She just looked at him, her eyes steady, and said, "I don't need to." Paul laughed, but it was forced, and the other recruits watching shifted uncomfortably. Rachel turned and walked away, her boots quiet on the dirt. The knife stayed where it was. Rachel was reinstated that afternoon. Full training rights. A personal security detail followed her 2 soldiers who kept their distance, but never let her out of sight. The camp felt different now. Derek, Travis, and the others who'd mocked her didn't meet her eyes anymore. They walked the other way when she came near. But one instructor, a bitter man named Sergeant Klein with a chip on his shoulder and a need to prove himself, wasn't done. During a tactical drill, he stood up in front of the squad, his arms crossed. "Rumor has it you're skilled," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "But combat tactics aren't just theory. Teach us, let's see if you're really better." The challenge hung in the air, and the squad gathered to watch their faces a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Before the lesson, Rachel was handed a worn-out training manual, its pages dog-eared and marked with coffee stains. Klein smirked as he gave it to her. "Use this," he said, "unless you think you're above it." The squad snickered, expecting her to flip through it nervously. Instead, Rachel set the manual down without opening it. She stepped to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and started drawing a new scenario from scratch. Her lines were clean, her annotations precise. She didn't need the manual. The squad's laughter faded as she spoke, her voice steady, explaining a multi-flank assault she'd designed on the spot. Klein's smirk vanished, replaced by a tight frown. Rachel didn't hesitate. She stepped to the front of the room, picked up a marker, and started drawing battle maps on the whiteboard. Her lines were precise, her explanations clear. She talked about real combat scenarios, flanking maneuvers, choke points, fallback positions like she'd lived them. Because she had, her voice was steady, never rushed, but every word carried weight. She pointed out details, small things that could mean life or death in a firefight. The squad leaned forward, their notebooks open, their pencils moving. Even Klein stopped pacing his arms, dropping to his sides. A colonel, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, stood quietly at the back. When Rachel finished, he stepped forward. "I was in Hollowtide," he said, his voice low. "That's exactly how it went down." The room didn't move, didn't breathe. During the break after her lesson, a small crowd gathered outside the training room. Rachel was packing her notes when a recruit named Maria, a tough-talking woman with a habit of sizing people up, approached. "You think you're hot stuff now?" Maria said, her voice sharp. "Teaching us like you're some general." Rachel zipped her bag, her movements slow and deliberate. She looked at Maria, her eyes calm but piercing. "I'm just doing my job," she said. Maria opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The other recruits watched, their whispers fading. Rachel slung her bag over her shoulder and walked out, leaving Maria standing there, her hands clenched. That evening, Rachel was called to the command tent. The colonel was there along with Captain Ruiz and a few others. They didn't say much, just handed her a letter. She was appointed special tactical instructor, no formal rank needed. Her name went up on the wall of honor the next day, a photo of her standing in the auditorium, her eyes sharp as steel, her hands empty but steady. The plaque read, "Survived but never surrendered." Nobody clapped. Nobody needed to. The camp knew who she was now. The fallout came quietly, but it came. Derek, the wiry recruit who'd mocked her uniform, was let go from the program. His file cited conduct unbecoming. Travis, the squad leader who had ignored her strategy, found his name trending online for all the wrong reasons. A video of his tantrum during the simulation had been leaked and his reputation tanked. Ethan, the one who'd called her a janitor, lost his sponsorship deal with a military gear company. They didn't give a reason, but everyone knew why. Cole and Mike, the other two from the training run, were dropped from their unit's elite track. No ceremony, no explanation. Just a notice on their bunks one morning. A few days later, Rachel was overseeing a live fire exercise when a recruit named Greg, a guy with a loud laugh and a habit of talking over everyone, interrupted her instructions. "This is basic stuff," he said, rolling his eyes. "We don't need a lecture from you." The other recruit smirked, waiting for her to falter. Rachel paused, her clipboard in hand, and looked at Greg. "Show me," she said, her voice calm. Greg hesitated, then stepped to the range and fumbled his shot, missing the target entirely. Rachel stepped forward, adjusted his stance with a quick touch, and fired a perfect shot. The range went quiet. Greg's face turned red, and he didn't speak for the rest of the drill. During a final evaluation, Rachel was tasked with running a stress test for the recruits, a grueling obstacle course under simulated enemy fire. A recruit named Dylan, with a cocky grin and a habit of boasting about his athletic awards, shouted across the field, "Bet she can't even keep up." The others laughed, egging him on. Rachel didn't respond. She just started the course, her movements fluid and precise, navigating barbed wire and climbing walls like they were nothing. She finished first her time, beating the camp's previous record by 10 seconds. Dylan crossed the finish line, panting, his face flushed with embarrassment. Rachel didn't look at him. She just handed her timer to the instructor and walked away. Rachel didn't talk about it, didn't gloat, didn't even look at them as she passed by. She just kept moving her boots steady on the gravel, her bag slung over one shoulder. But something had changed. The way she carried herself, the way her eyes scanned a room, it was like the air around her had weight now. People noticed. They stepped aside when she walked by, not out of fear, but respect. One afternoon, as she was packing her gear for a new assignment, a black SUV pulled up outside the training field. The door opened and a man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet confidence that didn't need words. He wore a plain jacket, no insignia, but the way the officer straightened when he approached said everything. Rachel's husband. Nobody needed to say his name. The camp knew. The air shifted like a storm had passed through and left everything still. Derek, standing nearby, tried to say something, a weak apology that stumbled out of his mouth. The man didn't look at him, just walked to. Rachel placed a hand on her shoulder and nodded. She nodded back, her face calm, her eyes steady. The room didn't need to change for her anymore. It already had. Rachel picked up her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked toward the SUV. The officers watched, silent. Travis looked away, his face red. Ethan stared at the ground, his hands shoved in his pockets. Rachel didn't turn back. Didn't need to. Her silence said everything. On her last day at the camp, Rachel was asked to address the new recruits. She stood at the front of the room, her uniform still plain, her hair still tied back. The recruits watched, some curious, some skeptical. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. She talked about survival, about keeping your head down, but your eyes up. About knowing who you are, even when nobody else does. When she finished, a recruit in the back raised his hand. "How do you stay calm?" he asked. Rachel paused, her hands resting on the podium. "You don't," she said. "You just keep moving." The room was silent, but it wasn't the silence of doubt. It was the silence of respect. She'd come to the camp to start over, to prove something to herself. Not to them, never to them. And now, as she walked away, the dust kicking up under her boots, it was clear she'd done it. Not with words, not with anger, but with every step she took. To everyone watching, to everyone who's ever been judged, looked down on, or told they didn't belong. This one's for you. You weren't wrong. You weren't alone. Your silence carried weight, and you kept walking. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.